All right, hey, it's Rob, and we are still doing every CD I own, maybe for the rest of time, I don't know. But anyway, moving right along, I've got disc 6, 7, and 8. I am featuring in this video from the Stylistics. There you go, 70s Philly soul band. This is one of those collections that has become very reasonable to purchase. There is a series called the Original Album Series, I think, that are 5 disc sets. You can get them from hundreds of different bands, basically, and they're just no frills, 5 CD sets. Sometimes the CD is like a live CD or one of their, lesser releases, but whatever band you can think of, major bands in the 70s and 80s from multiple different styles, they have those Original Album Series releases you can get very cheaply. This is not one of those, but this is something similar. This is a 3 CD set, 55 tracks. I'm sure it was not very expensive upon release. 2017, I think, is when this guy came out, Mercury Records. I bought it used in Orlando, Florida. I was working on the film. Every one of these CDs seems to have a story. I was working on the film Fly Me to the Moon, Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, that movie that just came out about faking the moon landing. And we were staying in Port Canaveral, Cape Canaveral, whatever it was, and they had moved us to a different, probably cheaper hotel for the last couple of days. I think that's when we ended up in Orlando, and I believe that's where I bought this at a used CD record shop. So the Stylistics are one of those bands that I heard a lot growing up. I grew up in Detroit. We had this great pop station called WDRQ. There will never be a station that had this mix of music. It just doesn't happen anymore. We had the pop songs of the day. You'd hear Elton John, you'd hear Barry Manilow, whoever, was on the charts at the time. And then you'd also hear this great mix of a lot of Philly soul, like the Stylistics, the Emotions, tons of music from the Spinners, the Dramatics. A lot of these bands that featured multiple vocalists, they usually had a guy who sang in a high falsetto, like they have here in the Stylistics. They relied heavily on the choral electric sitar. If you don't know what that is, it's an electric guitar that is set up to play like a sitar, and a lot of these songs have that sitar melody. The Spinners use that as well. And it was just kind of in that period when they were transitioning into disco. So some of these songs are called Disco Baby or whatever. And disco was a really new thing at the time. This was like early 70s, mid 70s. But Stylistics had a lot of great songs that you have heard and may just not know the band that does them. Stone in Love with You, Betcha by Golly Wow. What else is on this one here? You Are Everything, star on a TV show, You Make Me Feel Brand New. There's a ton of them. This is one of those bands where like you really, just aren't that familiar with their history and who they are, maybe even their name. But when you hear that song, you're like, oh yeah. If you grew up in a certain era like I did and listened to a certain radio station like WDRQ in Detroit in the early and mid 70s, just when you were getting into music, and that's when I was getting into music. So for many, many years, I never really thought about bands like the Stylistics. I got into rock, and I was into Black Sabbath, who I've already profiled, and Led Zeppelin, and that kind of stuff, a lot of 60s and 70s rock. And even though I had heard this stuff growing up, I just didn't know much about it, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. But I circled back and got into it, and this stuff is great. Well worth it, especially if you can get yourself 3 CDs here for a very low price and pretty much all their great songs on a no frills package. I don't think this even has a booklet. It does not. So it's just 3 CDs. That's what you get. But excellent stuff. I was just listening to it the other day and I do enjoy it. You Are Everything, the Essential Stylistics. All right. So that's my profile for CDs 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to eventually, hopefully, get through all of them. It's going to be about 52,000 videos, I think. But we'll see how far we get. All right, thanks. Bye.